And we're back. It was a great meeting we had, so we're ready to go. So let's talk about some, and the word to know here is anarchist. Now, sometimes I assume you guys know I assume that you guys know terminology. Anarchy. Anarchist is someone who does not believe in government. They believe government is too big, government is restrictive. They don't believe in a ton of laws. They kind of believe in just letting people do what they want to do. So that's what's happening. So we're going to talk about a couple of immigrants, anarchists, three of them, but these two are together. So Sacco and Vanzetti are two Italian immigrants. They are also anarchists. So they are not just two Joe Schmoes walking through the streets. They've got some things going on. But here's what takes place. There's a shoe company, I think it's called the Morrill, M-O-R-R-I-L-L, I think, Morrill Shoe Company. And they've got and it's a big shoe company, so they got payday. And so they've got a security guard and the guy that's the paymaster. They've got all the money in a container, and they're getting ready to go pay out the employees. When that happens, they're accosted by two guys who shoot and kill them. Later on, Sacco and Vanzetti are caught. They are assumed to be the guys that do it. Now, here's what takes place. So the security guard has a gun on him. The gun is removed. So the security guard doesn't have it anymore. When these two guys are caught, they actually have gun shells in their pocket which match the type of gun shells used to shoot these guys. And then the other guy has a gun that is like the gun that the security guard had. So, you may look at that as circumstantial evidence. Other people may look at that as, okay, that puts them there. So anyhow, they do have a trial. They're found guilty of murder and robbery. Later they're executed. They're put in jail, and of course later they're executed. They're tried in Massachusetts. That's where it takes place, but they're executed down in Charleston, I think. But here's the thing. This is what comes up. Are they actually found guilty because they did it, or are they found guilty because they are immigrants who have a history of being anarchist? And so what we start to see is the lines being blurred. That if you're an immigrant, if you're an anarchist, you're automatically guilty of something. We don't know what, but you're guilty of something. And of course, one of the things that does take place is the jurors, for the most part, give it the benefit of the doubt. They put all the faith in the police found them, made a case against them, and the police know everything and wouldn't do anything wrong. The judge, who, looking back on it, probably let some things slide that shouldn't have slid, and the jury goes ahead and finds these guys guilty of things. So it sends a message of what is going to take place in America. It is an anti-immigration situation. So that kind of relives the Ku Klux Klan. So once again, the Klan is going to come up again. We had them during Jim Crow, but then what's going to happen in the turn of the century, the 1900s, we've already discussed this a little bit, is their anti-immigration faction. For a little while, they actually turned away from African Americans and really put most of their attention towards attacking Jews, Catholics, and immigrants. So it is a revival of nativism. And once again, this is just my little soapbox, this is the protest they had right down Pennsylvania Avenue. If you can see down there is the Capitol and stuff. You will not see any Confederate flags. You see American flags, because that's what the Klan used to carry all the time. But this again shows you, if you were to have this picture on a CB exam, you would bring in the American flag and how it is the revival of nativism, how they're looking at as true Americans who in their minds have been here forever. They forget the fact that they were immigrants at one time. So during the first Red Scare, we have what's called the Palmer Raids. Now, Mitchell Palmer is the Attorney General of the United States. And you need to keep these names separate. In the first Red Scare, taking place during the late 1910s and into the 1920s, is Mitchell Palmer. He's an attorney general. In the second Red Scare, which is right after World War II, the 40s, 50s, is Joseph McCarthy, who is a senator. And people get those two guys mixed up, and the first Red Scare and the second Red Scare mixed up all the time. Try your best to keep them together. I mean, separate. Here I am messing them up. But what happens here is Palmer, as Attorney General, goes after immigrants, people that he thinks are radicals, people that he thinks are communists, subversive. Subversive means going against the laws of America. And so what he starts to do is he skirts around the Constitution. He does search and seizures without warrants, saying it is all based on security for America, and we're still in a clear and present danger and stuff. So he's going after immigrants, suspected anarchists, suspected communists, and he's also going after unions, especially the industrial workers of the world, because in his mind, everyone who's a member of a union must be a communist. So if you look, we're going to talk about Emma Goldman. Now, she is a lady during this time who is an immigrant, she is an anarchist, and is a communist. And this is her office. She's a speaker, a writer, publisher, not publisher, writer, I'm sorry. And she is enemy number one for lots of different reasons. But let's talk about Emma Goldman. This is her right here. She actually protests the draft. We know other people have protested the draft. We know from Schenck versus U.S. that is illegal. She is a communist after the communist revolution has taken place in Russia. So we know that's going to be a problem. But let's go back here. So she is a radical and a feminist. Now, she is not a feminist along the lines of Susan B. Anthony and those folks. She was not even that worried about suffrage. She didn't care about voting and stuff. She did care about that women should have free speech, birth control, equality, independence. She was worried about that. She was not worried about women having the right to vote because she didn't believe in the government anyhow. But let's talk about her for a second. First of all, she is from Russia. She's born in Russia and then comes over when she's in adolescence. All right? While she is over here, she marries, divorces, marries. She sides herself with all these guys who are also communists, so much so that later on, when she is deported, her parents don't even want to take her in because in their mind she is too loose, which means she was with one too many men. She was with a lot of men. Some she married, some she didn't. But she was really looking for guys who were kind of on that same intellectual thought process as her. Of course, back during this time, birth control is illegal. But she is championing birth control for women and stuff, the right to do with their bodies as they want. Of course, she goes around telling people they shouldn't register for the draft. If you get drafted, don't report for the draft. So all of these things are taking place. She eventually is arrested, and then she is deported. Now, when she's deported, let me tell you, she goes to Russia, France, all throughout Europe. She eventually goes up into Canada. She comes back to America what is it? She comes to America to promote her book, but then talk about, I think, women's independence. But I know that when she comes back, she makes an agreement that she cannot talk about the government, say anything bad about the government. However, this makes anarchists mad at her because it's kind of like she's a sellout. Now she's promoting her book, trying to get women's rights and all that. She's agreeing not to talk about anarchy, so that ticks them off and stuff. One of the things that she does that she's known for, remember William McKinley, who was the imperialistic president. Roosevelt is the vice president. And of course, McKinley is eventually going to be assassinated. Well, he's going to have a couple of assassination attempts on him. One of them is Emma Goldman and one of her flings. They tried to kill William McKinley, and she gets arrested for that. There's another guy, Henry Frick, he was like Andrew Carnegie's right-hand man with Carnegie Steel. And this Frick guy did not like unions at all. And so, of course, he's trying to keep the workers down. We talked about the robber barons and stuff. As a matter of fact, he was kind of guy that would go in and bust up strikes. As a matter of fact, one of the strikes that took place in Carnegie Steel, Andrew Carnegie went over to Europe so that he had an alibi. And while he was in Europe, Frick got these groups of guys together to come in and attack a strike. And it killed people. But Carnegie had an alibi. So all that took place. Well, people knew it was Frick behind all this. And so Emma Goldman and another different one of her guys go in and have an assassination attempt on this Frick guy. Actually shoot him a couple of times, but he's able to survive and stuff. And I'm sorry, you know what? Let me backtrack on the McKinley thing. She didn't know the guy that killed McKinley. I'm sorry, I messed that all up. The guy that kills McKinley, Leon, and he's got a crazy last name like Zlagos or something like that. But he actually kills McKinley. He kills it based on a speech he heard Emma Goldman say. I apologize. She is part of the assassination attempt with Frick. He is shot but doesn't die. McKinley is killed by this guy, and he does it because he goes and sees Emma Goldman talk about the government, talk about how the government is out to get people, imperialism, all that stuff. So of course the guy that killed in that situation is going to be McKinley. So she is enemy number one for this first Red Scare. And as you look at it, they go in, they go through her stuff, trying to find stuff on her and all that. She's eventually deported, goes around and all that stuff. So, we look here, we've got a few political cartoons. One, Americans are starting to say, hey, we've been too easy on these folks. We got lawlessness, anarchy, all these folks here that are wrapping themselves around liberty. Uncle Sam says, I've been a little too easy with this fellow. And if you look at it, his axe here says deportation, investigation. That's one of the things that you run when you are a democracy and freedom of speech and letting people be independent. It opens it up to these folks. Now, let's look at it. All these anarchists are coming over here. Why are they not staying in their country? Why are they not staying in Russia? Why are they not staying in France and Spain? Well, you probably already answered that. Because over there, they would have been executed sooner, quicker. Over here in America, as people say, you have a freedom of speech, freedom to do things. All right, there's Mitchell Palmer right there. And of course, what I was just saying, there's Statue of Liberty. Come unto me, you oppressed, ye oppressed. And what's going to happen is these European anarchists, who in their country would be executed, jailed, are now coming over. And of course, they're going to rail against the government that has given them freedom of speech because they want total anarchy, which is crazy, but that's how it is. So what are your domestic consequences of World War I? We've talked about this, but it's a little bit of a wrap-up. Accelerated America's emergence as the world's greatest industrial power. But keep in mind, after World War I, we're trying to be isolationist. We do not join the League of Nations. We don't join in with the alliances of the Treaty of Versailles. We want to sell you stuff, even though we missed out on the opportunity, really, with industry. At least with our farm crops we do. And probably compared to what the rest of Europe is doing, our industry is doing pretty well. We got the Great Migration with African Americans. This is the big one, the anti-immigration, anti-radical sentiments against those immigrants coming in. And then, of course, another huge thing, which is going to lead to the 19th Amendment, is 1 million women coming to the workforce. Instead of being stay-at-home moms, they're going to now earn a living and come in and do things. So this just kind of re-emphasizes what we've already talked about, reasons for the U.S. Remaining neutral, and then of course eventually we do get in, which help the Allies, because keep in mind Russia gets out. That's going to show you how lands are going to eventually be broken in. Remember, Austria-Hungary used to come all the way down in here. Germany was all over here. All right? We see this, we think about how we had imperialism, mainly with the European countries, splitting up Africa. Today, Africa is a little over 100 nations. There are some that are very, very tiny, but 100 nations at one time, right after World War II. World War I and World War II is going to see the emergence of these nations of Africa. All right, and then there are some little, posters you may want to look at. All righty, that is it.